pull, thank you, Liz. I am gonna pull Marcus and myself onto the screen so we can all see what's going on. Exciting. All right. Thank you all so much for being here for our very first virtual town hall meeting. We are so happy to see this crew out here. We have a really, really exciting hour coming up ahead of us. So we're just gonna go ahead and jump right in just to give everyone kind of a little preview of what we have going. A lot of folks asked some really, really great questions in advance, and we're gonna do our best to get to as many of those as possible. However, we also wanna hear from everyone who's on here tonight. So if something comes up while Marcus is talking, if there's something that you wanna hear more about or a question you realize you have, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll do our absolute best to get to it. And we'll just answer as many as we can. So with that, I think we're just gonna dive right in, go ahead and get started. I'm gonna start off with the first question. Marcus, who are you? Why are you running for Congress?
Well, let me first say good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us in our first virtual town hall, as Molly said. I'm gonna apologize first and foremost because I'm getting over a bad sinus infection, so I will be coughing a little bit. I'll try and mute myself so you all don't have to hear that. But, you know, to tell you a little bit about me, I'm Marcus Flowers, the Army veteran and Democrat running to unseat Marjorie Taylor Greene here in Georgia. I was born in Troy, Alabama, the birthplace of John Lewis. At 11 years old, I moved into a children's home in Talladega, Alabama, which is right next door to the district, because my parents couldn't afford to support me. At 18 years old, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's what I've been doing for the past 27 years on humanitarian efforts in Sudan, peacekeeping missions in the Balkans, and a decade in and out of combat zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've served our nation on 4 continents as a soldier, a defense contractor, and a government official. Put simply, America has been my life. I've had the honor and privilege to serve alongside some truly great American heroes. During that time, sorry, I've negotiated on behalf of the United States with Iraqi and Afghan warlords. I've been to Camp Bucca, the birthplace of ISIS, and I've looked into the eyes of our enemies, and I've seen the damage done by extremism, radicalism, and disinformation, and I won't stand by and allow it to happen here. For most of my life, I've considered myself apolitical or nonpartisan because I was serving our country overseas for almost 3 decades under multiple administrations, being bound by the Hatch Act, and as a government official, I was not allowed to be outwardly political. But during the social reckonings of our country over the last 4 years, during the last administration, I saw hate speech and division become all too common in our political discourse. And I was sickened by the racial divides that continue to make this country less than it can be. I could clearly see during that time that we were headed down a dark and dangerous path. And then January 6th happened. I watched as police officers were being beaten with an American flag, and a Confederate battle flag was paraded through our Capitol rotunda. At that point, it became mission critical for me. The very next day, I called my supervisor and I resigned my post as a government official to run for Congress. Sorry, this goes way beyond politics for me, people. This is about right and wrong. It's about preserving our democracy for future generations. I know we can and must restore honor, decency, and integrity back to this seat. And I've been working every day to build a campaign that is strong enough to do just that. Which is why our campaign's been endorsed by some truly great Americans whose values and accomplishments inspire me, like Ambassador Andrew Young, a stalwart member here in Georgia of the civil rights movement, U.S. Senator Max Cleland, a disabled veteran like myself, someone who served this nation honorably and sacrificed so much. Senator Jen Jordan, a dear friend and a truly remarkable Georgia State Senator who's also running to be our next Attorney General here in Georgia. Congressman Eric Swalwell, who knows how to get things done by working with people on both sides of the aisle. This is an example I intend to follow. We've also been joined by several national groups like Vote Vets, No Dem Left Behind, Collective PAC, and the Congressional Black Caucus PAC. But the endorsements that I value the most are the ones from over 100,000 donors, grassroots donors all over the country who've stepped up and joined this movement. Thanks to your support, we raised $1.3 million last quarter and have over $1 million cash on hand. We'll use those hard-earned American dollars to make an unprecedented investment in this district. We will engage, connect with, persuade, and sit down and talk to voters where they are, at their door, over the phone, and in their communities. We'll have the tough conversations necessary to win here. We will be the first ever Democratic campaign to run TV ads in this district, in both the Chattanooga market and the Atlanta television markets. We'll show this district, the state, and the country that if we organize, we can win. I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm not naive. This will be an uphill battle. Georgia's 14th district is facing multiple challenges, and no matter our political leanings, these are issues that affect us all daily. The rising cost of living, access to healthcare and education, rural broadband, finding jobs that pay a living wage and allows us to support our families. Also, the safety of our communities. These are the kinds of problems that we're facing here daily in my district. And these are exactly the kind of problems that I'm running for Congress to be able to help fix. I believe that my district should have a voice in Washington, D.C. that's working to deliver for them daily, not someone whose only job seems to be sowing hate and division. So if you're like me and you believe that disinformation and misinformation and radicalism is dangerous, if you believe that service and honor still matter in this country, and if you think our American democracy is worth saving, I need your help in this race. There's only one way we're going to be able to do this, and that's together. So thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Marcus. The first question I'm going to throw at you is one that I've already seen come up in the chat a little bit. This is a really red district. We haven't elected a lot of Democrats here. Why do you think you can do this?
Well, first of all, let me give you guys a little background on the district and how Marjorie Taylor Greene came to be our congressperson. She was running in Georgia's 6th district against Lucy McBath, or in the primary, I guess Karen Handel to run against Lucy McBath. Well, our former representative, Tom Graves, decided to retire. So Marjorie Taylor Greene swoops in at the last minute in the primary, self-funded to the tune of $1.5 million, blanketed the airwaves, and basically stole the primary. The Democratic opponent who was running at the time received some threats, was having some personal problems, and decided to drop out of the race in September. The Secretary of State would not allow the Democrats to field another challenge or another candidate. That's when it became evident that Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to be our next representative, unfortunately. But the thing here that people don't understand is the people here are kind, generous, and caring people. And if you talk to them, which is what we're going to do, and not everyone's going to agree with us. There's about a third of the district that I think is probably with Congresswoman Greene, but there are so many other Republicans who are embarrassed by her, simply will not vote for her. She only won with 75% of the vote, running unopposed. And since then, I think it was a mistake that people who didn't really know who she was at the time, but now they're really seeing who she is and they're embarrassed. We're going to sit down and talk to those people. We're also going to make that historic investment with the funds that we've raised so far in the district to get out and reach people, energize the Democratic base, get them out to vote. We're going to talk to people on the other side of the aisle and let them know, which is something no Democrats have done in this district before. Hardly any Democrats have ever run in this district, maybe 2 others since it's been a district. But we're going to get out and we're going to have those tough conversations. And we're going to pull Republican voters, as well as independents who were disaffected by Marjorie Taylor Greene over into our camp.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. That's our path to victory.
Sure is. Well, Marcus, next question I have for you is one that I got a couple times on Twitter today. What's with the cowboy hat?
What's with the cowboy hat? Well, that goes back to my childhood. My granddaddy was a sheriff and a farmer in rural Alabama. As I told you guys before, I was born in Troy, Alabama, Pike County, Alabama. My granddaddy was a sheriff there. I used to always see him in his sheriff's hat throughout town. He'd ride around in his police car. I'd see him all over the place. I'd see him out on the farm wearing his black cowboy hat as he was out plowing the fields or tending to the cows and pigs. It's just, he was, you know, someone that I looked up to, one of the first male role models of my life. He died when I was 11 years old, and I wear a cowboy hat to honor him.
Thank you for sharing that. The next question I have for you, and this is another one that we've been getting a lot. What do you want to do for this district? What are your top priorities?
Well, for me, the top priorities in this district are jobs and the economy. Small businesses, which, you know, it's the backbone of the American economy. You know, they've been suffering here. Coming out on the opposite side of this pandemic, you know, a lot of places have been shuttered in the district. And I've been talking to small business owners and other business owners in the district. And, you know, that's something that we really need to be focusing on. And I will sit down and work with leaders as part of constituent services when I'm elected to Congress. You know, another thing is rural broadband. No big businesses are going to come to a place that doesn't have reliable internet. So that is one of the huge things that we need to get done in this infrastructure package, is help rural broadband. I mean, I live in a rural area and we have all kinds of problems with internet here. You know, just ask my campaign staff. You know, we'll be working and I'll lose internet for hours at a time. It's a huge issue here. Veterans Affairs is also something that's deeply personal to me. I'm a disabled veteran. I suffered traumatic brain injury and other injuries during my service. And, you know, going through the claims process was nightmarish. That's one of the things I want to work on if elected to Congress, and also bringing transparency and accountability back to Washington. My background's in compliance, so that's something that is deeply personal to me as well.
Those priorities all make sense to me. Next question I have, though, is, you know, it seems like right now it's really hard to get anything done in Washington. It feels like people can't work together. There's so much extremism and nobody wants to reach across the aisle. What are you going to do different so you can actually work towards these priorities?
Well, you know, and I kind of alluded to it in my opening remarks. You know, bipartisanship is important. And I know I told you guys I'm optimistic, but I'm not naive. We have to have two strong parties in this country, not where one party is rooted in reality and other parties focused on grievances and things that don't move the needle forward for the American people. We've got to be able to work across the aisle. You know, I've worked with people all over the world, all of our mission partners in Iraq and Afghanistan, from Europe and the Balkans. So I know that I can work with anybody. But again, I'm not naive. Those who aren't willing to work together, you know, we have to be able to go it alone. You know, this, like I said, this only works when the parties are working together. We can't have just a party of no, and we can't have a party who has all the ideas. You know, to me, one of the big things is, you know, if your policies aren't based on morals, then you're just in it for power. And that's how I see Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's in this for power. She's not there to work and get the work done for the American people. We've never seen her reach across the aisle and be able to negotiate in good faith with anyone. That's what I will do. I will sit and I will negotiate in good faith, no matter who it is, what side of the aisle you're on. We've got to get back to that. We've got to calm down this white hot rhetoric that's all too prevalent in our body politic today, and get to work and do the work for the American people. And that's what I want to go to Congress to do, is do the work.
Absolutely. So Marcus, you're a veteran. If you're elected, what can you do in Congress to help veterans and their families?
Well, our country has been at war for 2 decades. And I've been all over the district talking to people now, talking to veterans, spoken with a few members of the VFWs here. And a sad story that I just realized, and this guy's a friend of mine, he's a Vietnam veteran. He's only just now getting his claims processed after I don't know how many years, and getting the help and services that he needs. But he still has to travel, just like I did when I processed my claims for disabilities that I received during my military service. As having to travel an hour, 2 hours out of the way to do simple things. We've got to make this process a lot smoother, go a lot faster. We've got to make sure that those services are where our veterans are, in rural communities. I'll work hard to try and figure out some of those problems that the VA is facing and that veterans are facing nowadays. And like I said, we're coming off of 2 decades of war. One of the things people really need to understand about the true cost of war is that it's not just about beans and bullets. These are human lives that we're talking about. They're the effects of war. Having spent a decade in war zones, people are truly affected by that. We need to take care of our soldiers that are now home. And some people are having problems and don't even realize it yet, but they're going to need to be able to go back to the VA and they're going to need to be taken care of. I'll work day in and day out to make sure that we can smooth out that process and that we're taking care of those who take care of our country.
Absolutely. One question that we got in advance from Melissa was, if you're elected to Congress, what will you do to support the Black community?
I support the Congressional Black Caucus policies. One of the things I'm telling people, and I'm excited that, they're working a lot on voting rights. And that's something that I'm sure you've all seen, SB 202 here in Georgia. That's one of the big voter suppression laws. So I'm working with people to make sure that, we're getting people out, getting them registered, making sure that they haven't been purged from the voting rolls, and they will be able to get out and vote. That's one of the things that I will be working on diligently up until Election Day with the Black community, making sure that our voices are heard. And also, we've got some things planned for Election Day that I'm not going to share, but be looking out for it. We've been working with a few people. John Lewis is someone who inspired me. I'll put it that way. So we're going to be working hard on Election Day. Be watching out for that, people.
Absolutely. So another great question that we got in advance, this came from Lacey, is how are you going to make sure that our tax dollars are getting spent in ways that actually benefit this district? As I told you guys before, I come from a compliance background. So part of my job in compliance was to ensure that there was no fraud, waste, and abuse, that taxpayer dollars were being spent the way they were intended to be spent, that defense contractors weren't gouging the government. So that's something that's also personal to me. It's been my job for the last 20 years working in compliance. So I understand regulations and I understand how to look for things, how to work backwards, find out best practices that will save taxpayer dollars. That's one of the things that I'm passionate about, is saving money, but also listening to the people in the district, seeing what their needs are, and seeing how I can help with small businesses as far as getting startup. Because again, that's one of the things that's so important to this district, getting jobs, building jobs back in the district through small businesses. So that's another area that I really, really want to work on here. Speaking of small businesses and bringing jobs into this district, Corey had asked a question about what can we do to attract new businesses into this district and build up our communities?
Well, like I said before, infrastructure. rural broadband, you can't attract new businesses and the jobs, especially jobs that are 21st century jobs, skilled labor, high paying jobs that you can support a family on. We've got to get rural broadband sorted out here in this district. That's going to attract, bigger businesses. I mean, we've got a few things coming to places like Atlanta already and the larger cities who have like 5G networks. We need to get more of that in our rural areas so we can attract those businesses to come out. But in order to do that, we've got to get infrastructure passed. We've got to build the infrastructure to make that investment into our communities, to keep our talent here, to keep them from going away to the cities so that they can have affordable jobs and support a family. That's one of the things I will definitely be pushing for.
Another question that I've seen come from Kathy, and I've also seen brought up in the chat a couple times, is what can we do about voter suppression?
We've got to push back with everything we have against this wave of voter suppression laws that are out there now. Voting is a right. We should make it easier, not more difficult for people to vote. And I think the pushback is going to be great, especially here in Georgia. People are going to turn out. If you don't want us to cast mail ballots, fine. We're going to do everything that we can to get people to the polls. Make sure that we keep the voter registrations intact. And with the souls to the polls, you're taking away our Sundays, we'll find another way. But I'll be working with other groups to help get people out to the poll, to push back against these voter registration laws that are taking hold in our country right now. We've got to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We've got to do it. And if I'm in Congress, I know it didn't come through this last time, but I'll help keep it on the table. We've got to get John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. We've got to protect our right to vote. If it wasn't so important, no one would be trying to take it away from us.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons that there is so much voter suppression going on is partially due to a lot of the misinformation and disinformation that people like our opponent are spreading. How can you deal with that misinformation and disinformation that is going to start coming at this campaign?
Well, like I said, one of the things with my professional background is that I've learned to deal with fraud, waste, and abuse. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a fraud, and she's wasting our taxpayer dollars in Congress right now because she's not doing the job. We're not just pushing back against her, but we're pushing back against all of the disinformation out there that's being spread and the propaganda that's coming from places like Russia, our true enemies, and China, North Korea, and Iran. These are countries who want to see us broken. So we've got to pass laws. We've got to really look at companies like Facebook, who are huge proponents of a lot of this misinformation. And we really need to be taking this more seriously in the committees and finding ways to get some of this disinformation and misinformation out of our mainstream and protect our kids from seeing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. On a little bit of a lighter note, what's been the best part about running for Congress so far?
So far, it's been talking to people, just getting out in the community, meeting people and talking with them, sitting down and having those conversations, whether we agree or not on things. That's the best part for me. I enjoy sitting down and talking to people, meeting in person, meeting people where they are, hearing how they feel about things. That's the only way that we can move forward. Making people understand that, yes, I hear you. You're being seen. If you elect me to Congress, I'll do everything in my power to make sure that your voices are heard, because a lot of people feel like they haven't been heard in this district, and Democrats haven't put forth the effort and put forth enough candidates to get out and talk to people and offer them that support and a counter narrative to what they're seeing on Fox News and OAN. I'm pushing back against all that, and I've enjoyed being able to push back against that and talk with people. So I really do love talking with people in the district. Like I said, they're kind, caring, and generous people, and that's been the best part of this campaign for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that I saw some things come up about a little bit in the chat is, we all know redistricting is coming up. Without going too into detail, for those of us who might not totally fully have a grasp on what's happening with that, can you talk a little bit about where we are?
So right now, there are a couple of a draft map that's out now. To tell you a little bit about this district, for those of you that don't know it, it's bordered by Alabama to the west and Tennessee to the north. When you go east, you start pushing into the Atlanta suburbs. Now, one of the maps, the draft maps that have been put out, shows us going into Bartow County, which is the exurbs of Atlanta. Here's the good news. This district can only get bluer, and that helps our campaign. No matter what they do, it's going to get bluer. But we're reaching out and we're reaching across the aisle in redistricting. It's not going to hurt us any. It's definitely not going to help Congresswoman Green any. So I think we're safe there. But the flip side of that is, with the maps that they're drawing, they're trying to hurt other candidates like Congresswoman Lucy McBath with those maps. So there's going to be a lot of pushback on that. But we'll know more in November about that. So we'll touch on it then when we get into our, hopefully we'll know more in the next town hall in November.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that I have is, we've talked about service a lot tonight. Can you talk a little bit about what service means to you?
You know, for me, service, and I've served this country my entire adult life. Service means being a part of something greater than yourself. For me, it's always been selfless service. It's never been about me. It's been about the country, what's best for our country. I swore that oath to protect, support, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I meant it. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene swore that same oath. And I don't think she truly understands what the service means, because everything we've seen out of Congresswoman Greene has been about her, has been about grievances. For me, service is about helping those who can't help themselves, giving voice to people who feel like they've not been heard. That's what service means to me. And that's what I've been doing my entire career. And that's what I want to continue to do in Congress.
I know we touched on this one a little bit earlier, but we have had some folks kind of jumping in and out, and I did see it come up in the chat again. Can you talk about how you can reduce the political polarization that we're facing right now?
You know, the big thing is sitting down and negotiating with people in good faith. And you've got to talk with those people who are willing to negotiate in good faith. You know, we went up on Capitol Hill probably about a month or so ago, and I spoke with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. And it might surprise you that a lot of the things that you hear out of a lot of the Republicans in the media, that's not what they were saying to me when we were sitting down and talking. When I talked to them about the things that this district truly needs, the things that I'm hearing from the district, when I talked to them about Congresswoman Green, and mind you, a lot of these people you've heard of. They're prominent members of the Republican Party in Congress. And they're embarrassed by her as well, just like many of the people here in the district. I think some of them you can sit down and negotiate with in good faith. I think there's enough good faith in the center of both parties where we can get things done. But we got to get away from the polarization of the Donald Trumps and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and really work to get the job done for the American people. I think we can get enough people in the middle to sit down and talk. I think we're going to be fine.
I think so too. Another topic that got brought up a couple times earlier today is, can you talk just a little bit about healthcare and what you can do to make sure that our communities are healthy and safe?
Well, you know, here in the rural parts of Georgia, healthcare hospitals are, you know, for a lot of people inaccessible. You got to travel a little bit. You know, the number one trauma center in the state is in Atlanta. That's an hour away. You know, and there are even more remote parts of this district where people have to travel a lot further to get decent quality health care. we've got to work on that. And then I'll work to increase rural healthcare, get the job training first and foremost, to have nurses and doctors that are willing to come out here. Another thing is I want to do is help expand and build on Obamacare, expand Medicaid and Medicare here, and make prescription drugs more affordable. Our governor, Brian Kemp, he was against and hasn't allowed for the expansion of Medicare here in Georgia. And even though it's been paid for, so I'm going to push back against that as well. Those are the big healthcare issues that I see here in our district right now that I want to work on, and it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really big issue that affects everyone, no matter where they are, is climate change. What are some things that you can do to work climate change and helping the environment into your policy?
Yeah, we've got to have green jobs, more green jobs. I mean, right here in this district actually is one of the larger solar panel companies, manufacturing companies in the country. We need more jobs like that. There are some electric battery for buses. We've got some of that work coming to the district. We need to do things more like that. We need to start, training our kids who are coming up in the trades on green jobs. Climate change is real. We hear a lot about a couple of hundred or thousands of people at the border to Mexico crossing illegally. That's the huge thing that you see on Fox News and places like OAN. But imagine a world where we've got millions of climate refugees coming across all of our borders. We've got to turn the clock back now. We've got to trust the science on this one, and we can do that. So we need to start moving towards green energy and renewable energy as fast as we can.
Speaking of trusting the science, I saw this scroll by me in the chat. COVID, we're still dealing with it. What should we be doing?
Right.
How can we be reaching out and making sure people are staying healthy and safe?
Well, every time I get a chance to talk to people, I talk about getting shots in the arms. I mean, that's really the only way. I mean, but this really shouldn't be a political issue. I mean, we've been in the throes of this pandemic for 2 years now. I know there's a lot of pandemic fatigue. I am tired of this pandemic. I'm ready to see us get on the other side of it. But we know what the solution to the problem is, and that's getting shots in the arms. And that's reaching out to people, again, meeting them where they are and talking to them. And I understand and I respect that some people have legitimate concerns about the concern, even in the Black community. I've had family members that I've had to sit down and have long conversations with about the vaccine and why it's safe, and pull out facts and show data and research. I just think we just need to educate people a little bit more on this. And again, this falls back into the misinformation and disinformation category. We've got to silence some of those COVID deniers who are making this about things that it's not. And again, it's not a political issue. This is about life and death. And when people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are out spreading lies, she's causing people's lives. Here in Georgia, so many lives have been lost because of misinformation and disinformation about the virus. We've got to continue pushing back on that. And that's what I'll continue to do every time I go out and speak to people about it.
Absolutely. So Marcus, the next question I'm actually going to take, if that's okay with you. And that question is, what can I do to help and how can I get involved? And that is such an important question. There's one thing that we know, and that is when we organize and we get out and we talk to people, we talk to voters, we reach out and we have those conversations, we can do hard things and we can win even in really hard districts. But this isn't easy. We know it's not going to be easy. And Marcus is only one guy. He can't do it alone. And that's just the reality. It takes time and it takes money and it takes support. So first, if you have any time, even just 1 hour, like every couple weeks, we need you. We're making phone calls, we're sending texts, we're knocking on doors. If you're in the district, we're gonna have places for people to pick up yard signs. We're gonna have in-person events coming up. No matter who you are or where you are or how much time you have or what your experience is, there is room for you on this team and we absolutely need you. So I know that Liz is dropping some links in the chat. There's that volunteer interest form and you can just click on that, let us know who you are and how you want to help, and we will be in touch. The next thing is all of this takes money in order to have yard signs and literature and billboards and physical spaces and even things like the Zoom. That all takes money. And, you know, Marcus said at the beginning, we're going up against an opponent who had the ability to self-fund millions of dollars. We can't really do that over here. So we really do need everyone to chip in, whether it's $5, $10, $50, whatever you have. Liz is dropping that link in the chat. And then finally, we need to get the word out. We're doing this again next month. It will be on Wednesday, the November 17th, I want to say, at 6
17th, I think.
17th. Liz is also dropping the link in the chat. So what I need you to do is I need you to not only show up next month, I need you to bring 3 of your friends because we absolutely have to grow this movement. That is the only way we're going to make that happen. Before I hop into a couple other questions, I know we are virtual, we're not all together right now, but I still want to take a group picture. So at this point, if you're comfortable turning your camera on, even just for a minute or so, let's all go ahead and do that. And I'm going to put us all on gallery view. We'll blur out anyone's names. And I'm just going to give Liz a second to go through, take a little picture. Since we can't, we'll be together soon. We'll do them together soon, but I'm gonna let Liz do that. We're just gonna awkwardly give a little smile. And Liz will give me a thumbs up when she's all good. It's A-okay if you can't have your camera on. We still appreciate you. We're so happy to see you.
I saw a question pop up in the chat if we're gonna go out to the churches. We absolutely are.
That's a great thing. So I saw that one too. And I would like to say, if you are in this district and you are part of an organization or a church or a group or anything that you feel like this group should hear from Marcus, or you have an event coming up that you think he should come to, please DM me, DM Liz, and we will do absolutely everything we can. I'm actually going to toss my email address in the chat if you want to reach me that way. I know I probably texted most of you like many times bugging you to come to this tonight, so you might have my number already. But I'm going to put that in the chat because we absolutely, we're trying to meet people where they are. And if you can help us do that.
Yeah, I'm excited to see so many people from the district. I love that turnout. It's just outstanding.
All right,
yeah, guys, invite me to your churches.
Churches, events, anything, we want to be there. So one of the questions I kind of want to close us out with tonight is, you know, there's a lot of other qualified candidates in this primary. There are candidates on the other side. It's still early. More people could get in. Why should we pick you?
Well, you know, I've looked at the other candidates in this race, and you know, they're all nice people, and they're all running for the right reason. You know, they understand that this is, you know, we're at a very dangerous inflection point in our country. But here's the difference between my campaign and their campaign, and me and them. You know, we've created a movement here. We've outraised all the other candidates, or primary opponents, I should say, 10 to 1. You know, this campaign is going to be able to make that investment in the district. And I alluded to it earlier. We're going to be the first Democratic campaign to be able to go up on the Atlanta markets and the Chattanooga television markets. We're going to be able to blanket this district with mail. We're going to be able to knock on 100,000 doors. We're going to have a huge army of organizers out in the field, you know, and that does take money to do. And, you know, I'm humbled by the amount of support that we've gotten. But also, you know, you look at the last Democratic candidate that ran against Congresswoman Green, he dropped out. And the Democrats in this district were furious about that. But here's one thing I can tell you. Marcus Flowers was not built for backing down, ever. My entire life, from a very young age, having grown up in a children's home, having grown up in poverty, I learned how to deal with bullies at a very young age. And that's what Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She's a bully. She can't bully this guy.
One other question that I do want to give you, because I have seen it come up in the chat a handful of times. Can you talk a little bit about gun control?
Yeah, I can. You know, I tell people that I do support the Second Amendment. You know, I support all amendments. They're amendments. You know, I'm a responsible gun owner. Most people in this district, actually all the people that I know in this district who own guns are responsible gun owners. But we do have a problem with gun violence in this country, and we need reform to help end it or quell it. You know, we look at other countries, and you know, I think I'm just looking back at the beginning of this year and the number of gun-related deaths. It's just unnecessary. We can and we should have gun reform in this country to quell and stop that gun violence. We have to do that. It is our moral obligation to do such. And that's how I feel about it.
That's a great answer. I mean,
storage requirements is something that's, yeah, great. You have to, you know, that's one of the things when a lot of parents that I talk to, I have young children, you know, when we talk, you know, how are your weapons stored? You know, before we let our kids go and play, or before they let their kids come to my house and play. They know who I am. They know that I'm safe with all of my weapons. So yeah, that's definitely something that we should look at. Pam, thanks for that.
So before we wrap up, one thing that I do want to circle back on a little bit, just because I know we had some folks who joined later. Can you talk a little bit about some of your professional experience and how you ended up here in Georgia?
Okay, well, like I said, I was born in Alabama. I grew up right next door to the district, but my family has lived in this district for a very long time. My father has lived and taught school in the district for he taught for about 30 years in Cedartown. I have a sister that teaches in Rome, and my family lives in Georgia. So like at 18, I joined the military. At 20 years old, I left the country with the military, and you know, I was a supply guy, a supply sergeant in the Army. And as a supply sergeant, you know, basically you're counting the beans, counting the bullets, but you're dealing with a lot of regulations and SOPs and things of that nature. And you learn logistics from that. So when I left the Army, I became a logistics and compliance guy as a Department of Defense contractor. Again, dealing with regulations all the time, reading up on case law and things of that nature. You know, learn how all about voluntary consistency, or voluntary consistent, sorry, I'm having a, sorry, voluntary consensus standards and best practices, sorry guys. But, you know, we have a lot of regulations in the government. I mean, I have books that are this thick of nothing but regulations that I would go through. They were my Bibles, and I'd go through and I'd go visit contractors and ensure that they were, again, not wasting taxpayer dollars, weren't frauding the American people, and you know, they weren't abusing their positions by, you know, gouging tax dollars when, you know, some could. That was my job, and that's how, you know, I've learned to spot fraud and spot abuse and spot waste in our system. You know, I came up in that system, and you know, I think it's prepared me well. I've actually written reports that have gone up to, or been rolled up and gone into Congress, and it's something that I think has prepared me for Congress. Actually, experience that Marjorie Taylor Greene does not have, and that's pretty much my background. I ended up in Georgia because I came back home from overseas, and my family was here. They'd all moved from Alabama to Georgia. All of my family. My dad was already here. He'd been here for many, many years, but everyone else moved here. So this is home. It's right next door to where I grew up, actually. As a government official, I left Bremen for a little while, a few years, and I came back home. It's like I said, this is home for me. This is where my family is. These are the people that I knew and grew up around. So that's how I ended up here. As a small town boy from Alabama, I ended up right next door to where I grew up here in Georgia.
Well, we're so happy that you're here. We're happy that you're back. And I do, just before we wrap up tonight, again, Marcus, thank you so much for your answers. Everyone, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Liz is going to be dropping those links again in the chat. Again, no matter where you are or where you're from, we absolutely need you on this team. No matter how difficult, anything is winnable if we put in the work. We can make this happen, and I know we will make this happen. So Liz is putting those links in. My email is in there. If you have events, if you have follow-up questions, I want to hear from you. Before we wrap up tonight, I'm going to pass it back over to Marcus. Have any closing words to tie us all together for the night?
As I appreciate you coming out and listening to me talk for a while. Please continue to support our campaign. We need all the support that we can get. Like I said before, this is going to be an uphill battle. We're going to have to do everything we can to get Marjorie Taylor Greene out of office. It's time for her to be retired. And I can't do this alone. I'm going to need your help to do it. So tell all of your friends about our campaign and go to marcusforgeorgia.com to learn more. Thank you. And also one last thing. Hello, Ann. I saw you. Ann's a former colleague from Oklahoma. So I appreciate you joining us tonight.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Please email me or reach out if you have any other questions. We'll see you next month. We're so excited. Let's make this happen. Have a good night.
Night, everyone.